So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our panelists. We have a very good panel in this session, and the panelists would be talking about integrating banking and fintech to reshape digital financial services in this session. And this session is moderated by Shri Mihir Gandhi, who is partner and leader payments transformation, PwC. And the panelists are Shri Harsha Bhaumik, Director, Digital Economy and Fintech, Investment Division, Department of Economic Affairs, Ministry of Finance, Government of India. Shri Malaki Nugent, former Financial Attaché to India, US Embassy of India, and Vice President, USI SPF, would be joining us virtually. Shri Sabyasachi Goswami, Chief Business Officer, Perfumes. Shri Mukul Sukhani, Senior Vice President, MasterCard. Shri Arun Tiku, Head Business and Strategy, Cash Free Payments. Over to the moderator.
Thanks. Good afternoon, everyone. So a very interesting panel we have here. We're going to talk about how banking and fintech have converged, and what are the key learnings or disruptions that we are seeing in this space when they have converged. So we have a good mix of panelists over here, a few from the fintech world, few from the government space, and also few of our panelists are ex-bankers, so they will be also able to give us a good perspective and view of what they think or what are the views from a convergence perspective. I would like to open the discussion by saying that if you've seen banking in the last few years, the way it has evolved is essentially earlier banking was all about customer first, and they wanted to offer products largely independently, keep the customers with them, and cross-sell and sell different kind of products to the same customer. With the emergence of fintechs, what has been realized is that it cannot be a competition mode, but it has to be more of a collaborative mode between the bank and the fintechs. And what has happened is that a lot of banks in the last 4 to 5 years or maybe 6 years have experimented with having different ways to engage with fintechs. Either it could be in a partnership mode, or for specific technology, or for specific value-added services or processes that can be given to the fintech. While we have seen some new age private sector banks doing a lot of innovation in that space, there is still a lot of headroom to kind of do that collaboration going forward. So with this context, I thought that I'll open this, and maybe the first question I wanted to talk about was to Harsha in terms of we've seen the emergence of collaboration between fintechs and banks. A lot has been done in this ecosystem, but Harsha, what are your views from a government or regulator perspective? Do you think enough has been done, and what can be done more going forward? So just your views on that.
So, first of all, good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for inviting me for this panel. Before I start, just a very quintessential disclaimer. So, whatever I speak is my individual view, and it should not be construed as a government or the ministry's views. So, saying that, once again, this is a huge kind of a challenge in front of us to guide the fintech industry in the right direction. So the question is very pertinent, right? How the collaboration should happen between the banks and the fintech to grow the fintech industry overall in India and give India the leadership role in the global space. I think in some of the sectors, India is already showing that. So it's just my thought in that sense, how the collaboration should work. I think our respected moderator has already stated. So there can be 4 ways in which the banks and the fintechs can collaborate, right? First of all, they can actually tie up or do a partnership with the fintech to provide any kind of a financial product. The second thing, which I think is another way of model or operating model in which they can actually create some kind of a API marketplace, or you can actually think of some kind of a app container, where it can be a developers marketplace where the fintechs can contribute for the bank and then actually provide innovative products to the whole customer base. The third thing is itself, which we are seeing almost in the industry right now, is in fact, the bank can also be like a fintech and provide neo-banking services or digital banking. The fourth is one of the ways in which I think if it is kind of a new bank, right, can actually opt for those fintech players who is providing as a like a SaaS model or a banking as a service. So it can actually opt for a banking as a service and go ahead with it. But whatever I've talked about these 4 models, these are basically the models which is like in the world players or the market players are actually opting for. But India, we have an additional advantage of a public digital infrastructure. I think that is one of the model in which we are given an edge, because it is basically the India stack story. I can elaborate in my next comments. But I think that's the way to go forward for the collaboration between bank and the fintechs. The India stack story essentially states that both the banks and the fintechs can work on the same platform provided by the government, and where the concern of financial stability can also be looked into by our central bank, because it has some kind of a governance and some kind of a structured kind of a regulatory aspect also built in the public digital infrastructure. So I think I'll stop with that. If there is something more which needs to be clarified, I think I will take it up. Thank you.
Thanks, Harsha. I think very pertinent and relevant. I think the 4 models are fairly well explained, so thanks for that. And as you rightly said, the India Stack story has been a great example of how, the regulator, the government has given that push and the thrust. And it continues to do so, in different forms, be it at the ministry level, be it at a RBI level, now with the NPCI coming up with that level. So I think, yeah, we've all seen that and we've all been beneficiaries of that thrust, which, the regulator always comes out with. In fact, we always have to keep one step ahead and what's going to happen today and, just be ready or prepared for the new development. So today morning, there was an announcement of UPI on credit, right? So again, you have to think about, will the MDR be there, not be there? So many different, points of view need to emerge at that point.
No, absolutely. I just will add on, right? So the India Stack story I've just initiated. So it's very structured architecture, right? In terms of how you go forward with this different kind of innovation, because innovation and disruptions is very random and unstructured, right? So we have to have some kind of a like an architectural principles on which this whole innovation should be based upon. So one is the qualitative ones like the financial inclusion, financial stability. You talk about financial resilience, financial literacy, because ultimately, if you are doing a financial inclusion, in that endeavor, you can also do financial exclusion. Because there is so much of beneficiaries who are actually not financially literate, digitally literate, right? So then also, there is also a problem of whether the user experience is following technology or technology is following the user experience. And then last but not the least, actually, the whole concept of innovation has to be like reducing the cost, bringing in efficiency, right? And then on the India Stack story, we have tried to address all those things in terms of so the India Stack story, the 3 layers, right? The first layer is basically for identification and authentication. The second layer is basically for cashless and paperless, right? And the third layer is basically on the consent one. So for each and every layer, we have different use cases and different platforms. So to give an example, for the sake of time, I think the first layer is the identification and the authentication. We have the UIDI creating the Aadhaar database. And I think today's date, if I'm not wrong, is like 1.31 crore population who has already, 131 crore population who has already been enrolled in the Aadhaar database. And then we have the DigiLocker for authentication, because any kind of a regulator can accept DigiLocker issued documents. And then on the paperless and the cashless side, we have the UPI. UPI is giving us a lead position globally. UPI, we are actually clocking 45 crore transactions, right? And then I think last in May, we have clocked around 6 billion transaction in the May, and then total value of around 10 trillion rupees, right? And last year, we have clocked around 84 trillion rupees. If I'm not wrong, that converts to around $1 trillion US, right?
Correct.
So, and the target is like every day we should clock 1 billion. So what do we need to do? That's the next target, right? So similarly, on the consent layer, we are coming up with the different, we have account aggregator, we have cash flow based lending. We have so many things
Correct.
to talk about.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks, Harsha. Thanks for inputs. Mukul, I want to ask the next question to you in terms of your experience with both banking and now with the scheme. So what is your view in terms of the best collaborative strategy? We heard about some options from Harsha, but looking at it from a banking perspective or a banker's lens, firstly, the traditional mindset in India at least still exists that the customer, is mine, and I want to protect the customer and not give the details out to any other kind of entity. So what is your views in terms of the collaborative approach between banks and fintechs? Is it 100% there, or still there needs to be a lot of things done? And the reason I'm asking this is because a lot of banks have tried, experimented, shut down, their fintech collaborations. I mean, I don't want to name them, but we all know who they are, some of the mid-sized private sector banks. And now there are these newer private sector or younger banks that are trying to innovate. So what are your views on, from a banker's perspective, the collaboration between them and fintechs? Are they 100% open? Are they still doing it because they have to do it in certain pockets?
Thanks. Okay. Look, I think it's a very symbiotic relationship, honestly, if you look at it, right? It's come to a point where I don't think either can survive without each other. If you look at banks traditionally, how did we think of banks, right? We thought of forms, we thought of accounts, we thought of going to branches, waiting in line, drawing cash. All of those things came. And then the fintech revolution happened. And fintechs have changed the way we actually operate with banks. They've brought a tremendous amount of disruption. And if you really ask me, the banks have actually risen to the challenge in a way. And they are also disrupting themselves to create customer journeys, to look at customers from a completely different perspective. And that's what fintechs have brought. So if you look at it from a certain perspective, banks and fintechs, I think, are actually, if you look at fintechs, what are they? They are basically banks only at the end of the day, in a way, right? I mean, they're financial technology companies, and banks today run largely on financial technology. The back end is all technology. So I think there is a lot of collaboration that exists. I don't think one can survive without the other. And over a period of time, there will be a lot of convergence, where I think fintechs will be able to bring. So what fintechs have done really is completely change the way banks look at their customers. And today banks are evolving themselves into becoming fintechs, and therefore partnering and learning from each other.
Sure. Thanks, Mukul. Arun, you want to go?
Yeah, hi, good afternoon, everyone. Just to add on what the gentleman just said, because I have come from a banking background. I have a banking background working with a fintech. I've seen both the sides, and from my experience, what has happened is for a bank, because they have a legacy system. Let's not talk about only top 4, 5 banks or 6 banks, which most of the fintechs are working. There are other banks. For them to change their technology and to come to that level where they want to satisfy the customers, they will take n number of the time taken for that change is going to be huge, and these fintechs will help them to scale up the business. Ultimately, it is to serve the customers, right? The customer has to be happy. In the morning session, I heard one gentleman, I think, he was talking about that only 30% of the population is digitally oriented. They are the ones who are driving the digital. 70% of the population is still not. And India is a heavily penetrated as far as smartphones. If you just relate this particular thing, we have 750 million smartphones in the country at this particular moment with 1.2 billion subscribers. That means we are there, but because that reach is not there, the technology is not there, they're not able to use that particular facilities wherein a fintech can help these banks to scale up. I think whatever we have done, it is just the beginning. I'm sure the brighter days, as Harsha also pointed out, look at the UPI numbers. It is on a daily basis, on every monthly basis, it is setting up the new records. We don't know what is the actual number going to be. It is growing at that sort of, almost 30%, 29% CAGR on a, so that is the level. So if fintech starts collaborating with the tier 2 banks or PSBs, which is still not there in the overall, in the market, once that is done, I think you will see the actual digitalization happening into the country.
Yeah, I think totally agree with you. And I think one of the things that I just wanted to add to what you said is that fintechs will really expand reach into underserved markets. Today, historically, it's always been you got to go open a branch to service a market. Now with the fintech and with the ubiquity of a mobile phone, you don't really need a branch. And that's the collaboration that banks and fintechs will bring with each other to make sure that there's a massive geographic expansion. And that will lead to a lot of financial inclusion as well, because they will go to completely underserved markets and segments of customers who didn't have any access to financial services in the past.
Sure. Thanks, Arun and Mukul, for your views. The next question I wanted to ask was to Mr. Malachi Nugent. Can you hear us? Yeah, perfect. So welcome to the panel, and I think the question was more directed to you, was more from a US-India collaboration perspective. What are the key learnings from the US and that we can learn in India, specifically for the collaborative approach between banks and fintechs? What is happening there, and what are the things that we can learn potentially over here for India?
Sure. Thanks very much. And first, let me thank you to us for including this really important topic and really timely as well. Just really looking at the U.S. market in fintechs, and there are almost 11,000, about 10,800 fintechs in North America, and about at the end of 2021, that's the United States and Canada primarily. That's the double the number of fintechs from just 3 years ago. So that just shows how important this market is, how quickly it's rising, how quickly it's growing. About 1% of those as well are unicorns. The market valuation is greater than $1 billion. So that's about 45% of the world's total fintech unicorns in the United States. So this is clearly a market that is conducive to the growth of fintechs. And so the question is, what is it about the U.S. market that is so conducive to these companies? The largest of these unicorns are traditional firms that recently Mastercards, PayPal, and then followed by ones like Square, Fintech, in the Fintech sector, Coinbase, Robinhood. And then there are also those unicorns in banking, insurance, and then in health as well. So the fintech space is growing. It's not just getting deeper, but it's also getting longer. Nearly 9 in 10 Americans have access to financial services according to a survey by Aggregator. And that's up from just over half of Americans just in 2020. So again, not only are these companies growing, but also the access and their use to the market as well. And then of course the investment continues to rise. There was a little slowdown during the pandemic, so 2019, 2020 investment did. But it has bounced back, and VCs continue to invest in these companies. Look at the numbers here. Investment grew from about $60 billion globally in 2020 to $125 billion in 2021. And then in the first quarter of 2022, it was already $32 billion in the space. So this is still an attractive market. It continues to grow. That was another report. And within that sector, crypto is the fastest growing sector. It's attracting the most investment right now, but it's not exclusively going to crypto. It's also so the question is, what is it about the U.S. marketplace? And I think that we can say that even though there's such a plethora of regulators in this space in the United States, just like anywhere else in the world, financial services is the most heavily regulated sectors in the economy. And in the United States, we have a number of overlapping regulators. We've got the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, the Federal Reserve, the FDIC, that are all regulating various parts of the banking sector. We've got the SEC that's doing securities. You've got state insurance commissions that are responsible for insurance companies, the SEC and FINRA, Financial Industry Regulatory Authority, And then state officials are also doing feedback. Each of these all are trying to grapple with the rise of fintech and to what extent it will be regulated as traditional companies within their segments or something new, or in some cases, some of these companies will fall in space new. But that being said, in the United States, the regulatory approach has been quite supportive of the United States. And that's been very important. So we have regulation that's supportive of the growth of this industry through things like sandbox, and India has been doing sandboxes as well. And that's an important technique that the government can use to support the growth of innovation in these space. And then on the other end, we've got the finance. In the United States, we have a VC climate, both for the investments going in and a lot of specialized knowledge to make these investments on the first at the front end. And then you also have very sophisticated mechanism for financing, which is something that makes it more attractive for the investors to do this finance. So it's that combination of the availability of the finance and the reasonably supportive regulatory environment. And of course, the regulators are still very concerned about things like consumer protection, access to finance development in the market. They don't put growth of the market ahead of consumer protection. But within that framework, they're still very supportive of growth. So that said, how does that relate to of course, U.S. VCs are very interested in investing in pricing. There's a lot of appetite for it, there's a lot of interest. And I know that in India, the regulators and the government have been very supportive of that investment. There can always be more done, but in general, India has been very successful in creating fintech and for startup investment in the United States. And then, of course, going the other way, a lot of Indian companies are interested in accessing the market. So, US ISPF, where I work, we do have a lot of conversations with Indian startups that are interested in setting up in the United States, having operations in the United States, and incorporating funds from the US market as well. And so, the U.S. is very supportive of that. Of course, we don't have restrictions on those sorts of investments for setting up in the United States. And India is increasingly supportive of the U.S. government as well. And so, just in general, I think that the trend is very positive. And I think that the deepening relationship between the United States and India in this sector goes very well for the next year, 2 years, 5 years. And this really can be a driver of Let me stop there.
Thanks a lot. I think a lot of similarities between what's happening there and here in terms of the support from the regulators and the other kind of constructs that are coming up there. So, yeah, so what I was just saying is, yeah, there are a lot of similarities that you have pointed out what is happening in the US and what we are seeing here. Thanks for all your inputs, and we'll get back to you for the next question. Thank you so much. Sabya, I wanted to get back to you in terms of the next question I wanted to ask you. So from a different business models that we are seeing today in the market, right? When fintechs and banks or incumbents try to do something new or different, what do you think are the opportunities from a fintech perspective that can potentially emerge? If we see some of the learnings globally, what has happened there, and if you can draw out your experience of what you believe, what more can a fintech do? So, what are the opportunities in the Indian context?
Sure. Thanks, Mehir, for asking that great question. In fact, there are many, and I can speak for hours on this, but let me make a couple of points. First, I think we all know and we have already embarked the journey on the open banking. So that's what is the first opportunity that the fintech is seeing and will see for a couple of more years. Because I think we are just seeing the tip of iceberg from an open banking or an open network concept. So I was just attending a closed door event 2 days back on the recent launch on ONDC. And that's one great work that ONDC is doing in bringing digital commerce. I think fintechs can add immense value on that field. The next, what I see that when a collaboration is happening between, I would not restrict to bank, but an FI, because that's the right terminology, what has been missing a decade back and what we are seeing now is the speed of execution. And that's what matters. I think fintech has absolutely hit the nail in terms of speed of execution. So they have given that ammunition to the FIs that whatever you were ideating, when it comes to execution, use the fintech. That's the ammunition you have. So I think that's a lot more that a fintech can bring to the table. And with a collaborative approach, I think all the FIs are already seeing the early benefits, but it's just 10-20%. The point I'm trying to make here is why it is 10-20%. It is not because there is lack of intent with the FIs to consume the fintech services. The reason is because we forget one important phenomenon, which is the human element in all of this. We all in this room might be thinking the fastest technology, the best technology, the technology that can enable speed. What about the human, which is supposed to adopt that technology? It is not only the end consumers, but the people who are sitting within these FIs, whether it is bank, NBFC, or fintechs themselves. So I think what is not happening, which should happen, with a collaborative effort between both fintech and the FIs, is that how do you train and create the necessary awareness with your own internal staff to adapt these technologies which will actually take you to the next level of digital. Because we all are talking digital, but the internal mechanism is not here to either support or accept the changes that's happening globally. So I think if we stick to these 3 or 4 phenomena, I think fintech can do wonders for the entire BFSI segment.
Sure. Thanks, Abhi. I think very well said. What banks can ideate, the fintechs can actually execute in a very fast and high-speed manner. So thanks for some of those points. Very interesting. Arun, I just want to come back to you in terms of your perspective. You've seen both sides. Sitting from a fintech perspective, just the same point or the same question. Would you like to share any thoughts that what you feel fintechs are doing differently than banks? What is the bigger opportunity? Or ONDC, something which he did allude to, the open network for digital commerce, which has been recently launched. But any other new opportunities that you feel besides collaborating with banks, or FI, sorry, to broaden the term?
Very interesting question, mate, and thanks for asking this. My views are, see, it is on both the sides. We have open banking and we have banking as the software. See, so earlier, look at the way the banking used to happen. For everything, you used to go to bank, visit them, deposit your check, or even if you have to do documentation and everything, for everything you used to go to the bank. Look at the situation now. Now with so many tech companies coming, whether it is insurance tech, whether it is wealth tech, whether it is any other tech, everything are interconnected with banking as a software. Right? Banking as a software, it allows, because the use of APIs can be used in a way that everything can be integrated with one particular, within whatever you are doing, whatever the company you are doing, you have staff, you want the accounts to be opened, salary accounts or the saving accounts to be opened. You have the BaaS product which is linked on the back end. You have, as a company, cash-free payments, we have a product called accounts, and we have a linkage with a couple of banks. You open the accounts without even going over there. You have digital KYC, you do your digital KYC, and the account is opened immediately. You don't need to go, so you work in your environment. Similar, I think that is one particular thing which I see a lot of movement going to happen into the market. VAS is something which is going to be as big as any other technology which is happening, and it is actually collaborating multiple things into one API network and giving you everything within your ecosystem. You don't need to go anywhere. So that's I think is going to be big in the market which is going to come.
Thanks. Thank you so much, Arun, for your views. Mukul, I wanted to ask the next question to you in terms of the technologies that we are seeing emerging, right, from a fintech perspective, and also what are the new technologies that we are seeing coming out. From your perspective, what do you think will emerge going forward? And I also know that MasterCard has invested in a lot of these fintechs which have good cutting-edge kind of products or technology. So what are your views? I mean, what is the future going to be? Like, we've already seen few coming up recently. So what are your views on the technology part of it? So be it a cloud, be it a digital assets, the next few technologies we spoke about in the morning was on the blockchain side, some of the VDAs, virtual digital assets. What's your take from a MasterCard lens? What are you seeing emerging?
I think, it's a very large, plethora of technologies which are coming up. Blockchain is definitely something which is going to change a lot of the way in which we do things. There's been a lot of, conversations that have happened around cryptocurrency, but cryptocurrency is probably just one use case of blockchain, right? And blockchain is more, if you really look at it, it's a distributed ledger technology that leads to a tremendous amount of safety and security around financial transactions. And that's something which is going to be quite a lot, which is going to become, very big. I think other technologies that will come in is around data analytics. I think, data is still a very, I would say we would just still touch the tip of the iceberg as far as data is concerned. There's so much more that can happen around data, and we're all still learning. So, there's a lot of technology that is coming into the data side. And then on the risk management side as well, right? How do you really use, because that's a very wide range of topics that can be covered, or very wide range of data that can be covered to do risk management. So, how do you build technology, or how do you build processes and technology to manage risk on both the fintech as well as on the banking side of the business? So I think if you look at emerging technologies, these are 2-3 things which are going to be defining for us over the next few years.
Sure. Thanks, Mukul. I think good points. So one is on the business side, one is on the compliance or risk side. How can technology help in all these areas? So thanks for that. Harsha, what are your views on the technology side? I mean, you're seeing a lot of innovation happening, a lot of sandboxes coming up. What are your views on the tech side?
So from the tech side, tech will always be an enabler, right? So on the tech side, as I think our panelist has already mentioned, right, there is something called, you have the BCT, the blockchain technologies, you have also the IoTs, right? The IoT payments which is coming in, wearable, you can make payments with the wearables, you can pay payments from any of the devices, right? And then you also have the augmented realities coming in, right? And now the next big thing which will be coming up as a metaverse, right? And in terms of the Web 3.0. So those are all technologies which will be coming in, and this will also be adopting in the next 4 or 5 years. But from my perspective, it has always been the user first. I think one of the other panelists also mentioned, right? If the financial literacy is not there, the technology is always an enabler. If the financial literacy is not there, how do you apply those and how do you monetize those, right? And how do you actually get the benefits out of it in terms of the public services or enabling the inclusion part, enabling the stability part? So for me, the things are like it has to be both ways. Like with technology, we have to also stress on this technology, as well as we have to see what are the use cases where it can be applied. So it's a long discussion, because all the logos, if you're there on the screen, right, it can actually be like the mapping of the different life cycle stages of different financial services, right? And each of those different components of in that financial services ecosystem, right, has their own use cases, has their own application of technology, which we have to take forward. So for me, I guess it's like technologies will be the enabler, but overall, we have to find out how to engage the customers, how to engage the different other unserved segments, and take this whole inclusive fintech forward.
Sure. Thanks, Harsha. Thanks for your views. Sabya, I wanted to ask you the next question, and that is, more in terms of, what you have been seeing, taking a step forward. So one is you are saying that we keep the customers first, we develop products, we develop technology based on that. But India still is a country where a lot of population still doesn't have access to FIs or financial access or inclusion. And I think open banking, where you are kind of operating in is a great space to kind of, enable that. What are the new things you're seeing in that space? How can that help in promoting of financial inclusion or access to those segment of population that may not have digital payments or lending, that kind of access today?
I think the first step has already been taken by the payments players in the industry in terms of the UPI going to the last mile, and I think the proof is there out during COVID, where the world was kind of moving helter-skelter. India was able to transfer the money to the actual person who is in need or who was in need at that time. Anyways, but moving from there, I think one such great initiative that the Government of India and the regulator, the 4 FSRs that came together and put in place is the Account Aggregator framework, which I think also democratizes the data in terms of how the data can be made available for the financial products ultimately to be available to the beneficiary. And this can be both on the credit side as well as on the liabilities side. And any institution would like to kind of have the decisions made backed with data or lead with data, whatever you call it. I think the account aggregator framework will enable that in a big way. And that will help us it will converge with the open banking framework that overall the India stack is talking about. It is one such important element which will fit in that India stack story, which will help the financial inclusion. So this is one such thing. The next is what I said on the small SMEs and the buyers and sellers, which is digital commerce, which is the next step is the ONDC, which is trying to play the same role. So the account aggregator can be on the individual framework plus the SME framework, or an entity, large entity. The ONDC can be on the digital commerce, which is the suppliers and the buyers. And then I think we cannot not recognize the effort that our large public sector banks or the private banks have already played in creating the huge distribution, right? So I think with the last regulations on the DBU, I think the bank themselves are trying to create a fintech unit within a bank. So that itself will also fast track your last mile reach of the financial products, which is the point that I made, the speed of execution. I think they will do a great role in this as well. So it is not just that we should forget that part, what they play, that fintechs will only enable, but I think the large public sector banks and the private banks are already playing this role in terms of creating a bank within a bank, or whatever you can name it, and taking those financial products to the last mile.
Sure, understood. Thanks, Sabya, for your views. The next question I have is more of an open question. I mean, anyone can answer it, but I just wanted to understand, since morning we've just been speaking about how fast fintech is growing and how it's going to grow going forward, be it on the payment side or lending side or whichever area we pick up. My question is, how are we geared to handle that growth? Are we geared well from a business perspective, from a technology perspective? One of the points that came up in the morning discussion was we have a dearth of, though we have a great talent pool in India, we have a dearth of people even today, right? Because we don't have enough people in this space. and you see, the market is going crazy, and there's, a lot of, the great resignation happening, as they call it. So what more can be done to handle this growth? To enable the fintech sector to grow to the maximum potential, be it on the people side, product side, technology side, business side. Anyone, it's open, right? It's an open question.
Let me take this. Okay, I think one of the primary things is technology. Whether it is artificial intelligence, whether it is anything which is happening, how can we automate most of the things, and how can we scale it much faster? That is the crux of the thing. If we are able to achieve that particular thing, I don't think there will be much of the challenges in the future. Only thing is that we are still people dependent. And in the fintech environment, because I've been here for the last couple of years, I've seen how the fintechs work. You can't survive with one product. You have to innovate, and you have to keep on adding some new products every year, right? And profitability is going to be the major factor which is going to affect. Earlier, the growth, for the growth, profitability was compromised. Now profitability is something which everybody is looking at. Everybody is looking at how profitable you are. Once the company starts working on that, I'm sure the technology, new products will keep on coming. I'm sure the challenge of having people, because everybody is trying to make Me Too product, right? That's why the shifting of people and the dearth of people is actually felt in the industry. Once you start working on majorly on something new challenges, like nobody is actually despite of pandemic and everything, now digitalization has started being accepted in the MSMEs of the world. Earlier, nobody was interested into them, and they were also not very keen on getting onto these particular solutions, because for them, getting the solutions itself was a cost for them, right? They were very happy with doing cash business or whatever business in other forms of a check or a DD. Now, after pandemic, they have started realizing that the use of, but whatever we have done, it is still very, 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 very low. And that they are the customers who are interested at this particular moment to understand what sort of business, what sort of technology you are, how are you going to help them to digitalize. And I think once we start focusing to these particular aspects of the business, I don't think the talent is a challenge. Talent is challenge just because a lot of Me Too companies are coming. Nothing new is getting created. So I am sure with the new technologies getting adopted, like artificial intelligence and other things, I'm sure things will be much, much better in the days to come.
Sure, thanks. So your view is technology and awareness needs to be created to kind of have the adoption. Anyone, Harsha?
Yeah, so I would like to address this from the policy side, right? So because so much of innovations is happening, it's obviously there is high probability inefficiencies will be there in the system, right? But from the policy side, I think there are certain aspects which structurally is trying to guide the industry in a right direction. So to give an example, I think Sabyasachi sir also has spoken about the account aggregator. So to give a perspective on account aggregator, what is account aggregator? So we have created a structure in which there are FIUs and FIPs, right? Financial information providers and the financial information users. And this account aggregator is not only for a single regulator, it is across the regulator. So from the RBIs, the SEBIs, right? Then IFSCA as well as the PFRDA. So all the regulators are there. And then we also have created a sandbox, right? And those sandbox are inter-regulatory operating sandbox. So IROS is also present there, where a lot of innovations are happening. So these will be an enabler. I think we have talked about data. I think data is the new oil right now in this whole world, right? So whenever the basic intention is all these frameworks will give this access to those data, and on which the fintechs can actually innovate and create innovative products which will be a value add to the customers. So that is the way. And to just give an example for some of the use cases, I think there is already some of the schemes which our Honorable Prime Minister have announced, right, for the street vendor loans on the PM Swanidhi scheme as well as, and in this, I think this week only there is a press release on, we have created a website for micro loans for any small token loans in the www.jansamarth.in, I guess that is the portal. And then is also on the offering like invoice-based, cash flow-based lending, in which you can actually give, for the working capital management, people miss micro and small industries struggle for credit. So that cash flow-based lending will actually enable such a system in which those companies which are struggling for credit can get the credit out of their invoices. So those all things are structurally being done. Similarly, I think one of the aspects I also want to stress on is like in this year's budget, we have declared like 75 DBUs. DBUs with digital banking units will be set up in the remote corners of, in 75 districts actually. So there are, this identification of districts are in process. It will be identified based on certain criteria, depending on the women beneficiaries, access to digital access to those districts, right? And in terms of the micro and small industries presence there. So based on those DBUs will be set up, which will also be on the self-assisted mode or on completely digital mode, depending on the need. So it's not that everything being digital, then the digitally illiterate will be left off. So all those things has to be put into the policy making. And this is, I think, that is how we are trying to address all these issues and challenges in the current fintech innovations.
Great. Thanks, Harsha.
So also I have one slightly different perspective in terms of managing growth, right? Mihir, you asked the question of how is the fintech going to manage the growth? And I think this is where a lot of the collaboration that we talked about initially between banks and fintechs comes into play, right? Banks, as you know, have financial institutions, have grown and they have been able to manage the growth. They have set up legacy systems that are able to run the back end very, very well, right? So this is something that I think fintechs can also learn from the banks, right? How do you really manage the growth? Because the banks have already gone through that path and they have built these very, while we look at these legacy processes and we worry about speed of execution and all, which is actually very true because the fintech brings in the entire speed of execution into play. But with that speed of execution, you also need to make sure that you have a stable backend to manage that speed. And that is the collaboration, I think, between the banks and FIs that will help to manage the growth as well.
Here, if I can make one point. On the talent front, I think we all know that it's crazy out there. I really hope that the equilibrium is setting in with the VCs not funding so much, hopefully. But what is important for all startups and fintechs to remember, I think, we all talk of innovation, and I think we spoke about that Me Too companies. If I have to say that we truly want to become innovative companies or create disruptive products, what we need to do, each company needs to do is that we need to start recognizing the effort and not the outcome. The problem is that we start recognizing only the outcome, and hence a lot of good talent actually exits because they don't find merit in what they were trying. So we need to reward the experiments, the efforts, and not only, because out of 100 experiments, only one will succeed, right? So that's the challenge. If we really focus on that, I think talent will stick on.
Sure. Thanks, Abhay. Mr. Malachi, would you want to add anything to this question of
Yes.
handling the growth?
Yes, thank you. A lot of really good points. What I wanted to build into the city, actually my point was very comprehensive. Right. I wanted to just also mention that you said that in order for the growth really to be managed, you have to have technological innovation, you have to have a culture that will continue to foster that innovation, you have to have the right policy environment that will support it. And you also have to have infrastructure, which is very important, a back-end infrastructure to implement these new products. I think is actually quite uniquely positioned. And that's why I'm so bullish on the rest of the population, because they really do have a climate that is supporting all three of these things: innovation, policy, frameworks, and then the technology, the infrastructure. I think that it's really important to keep in mind too that we don't know where fintech is going to go. We don't know what the next big thing is going to be, and that's what's exciting about an industry like this. When you open up the environment to this kind of innovation, no one's know where it's going to go, and the next big thing is something that we're probably not even thinking about or seeing about. We saw that with the development of the web as a commercial platform 20 years ago. There were a lot of companies that started up that tried lots of different things, and most of them failed. But the ones that succeeded ended up rewriting the way that our economies they produce things, they sell things, and consumers buy things. And I think that's what's happening in the financial space. I think India is a really strong leader in that, both because of its demography, very young population, it's very digitally savvy, and because it does have a government that's supportive of this type of supportive of this growth in this sector. So I have a lot of optimism that India will be able to manage this kind of thing. And who knows what the next big thing will be. I think data is really very important, and that's going to be something that somebody mentioned, expanding Fintech to the SME sector. It's more than just using clever technology to access products that already exist, access knowledge, access facilities, for SMEs. But it's having access now to all of that data that SMEs have access to. And then figuring out how can a company use that, how can a small business person use the data that their operations generate in order to enhance their own business. So those are the sorts of things that are coming down the pipe that this technology really enables, and that strong policy framework in support.
Sure. Thanks a lot. Thanks, Mr. Malachi. So I think we have maybe around 5 to 6 minutes more to close the panel. So I just wanted to have your closing remarks, before we wind up the panel. Mr. Malachi, probably will go with you first. What are your closing thoughts or remarks, having heard all the panelists and the different kind of thoughts that came out? What do you feel is the future?
Well, I think I just summarized my optimism for this segment. That's really where I am when it comes to Fintech and the integration of Fintech and banking in India generally. I think this is a sector that is on the cusp of a real revolution, globally in the United States, in Europe, and India. And I think India is in a really strong position to lead that revolution, provided it continues to have strong supportive policy framework. And I think that the decisions that India makes over the next year or so with regard to digital access, blockchain technology, will be very, very important. Because I think that this is going to be something that we look back on in 5 years and say that was the moment at which Fintech and the future of finance really took off in integrating the aspects of blockchain technology and using digital assets to move finance forward in the 21st century. And India can be a leader again because of its demography, because of the size of its market, and because of its relatively supportive policy. And so that's where I'm looking at the next 5 years. What is India looking to do with regard to future of finance and blockchain technology?
Great, thanks a lot. So we go with a lot of optimism hearing your words. What about you, Arun?
I think this is just the beginning. I'm sure there are much more sunnier days going to come. We are going to be, as a country, the leaders into digitalization and the fintech. I'm sure this is just I'm very passionate about that particular thing. I can see that growth story has just begun, and I'm sure with the 5 trillion economy which we are going to, and fintechs are going to play a very, very vital role in that particular thing. Thank you.
Thanks. Harsha?
Yeah, thank you. I am eternal optimist. So I think just to give a summarization of whatever the thoughts which have from every one of us here, right? I think technology is moving at a great pace. So what it needed is like to actually guide it for a productive and usable consumer product which will give an economic value add. For that, I think the right interventions needs to be in place. We already have many of these very productive interventions. Just to give an example, we also have the Jan Dhan account Yojana, in which we have more than 45 crore accounts already created for financial inclusion, for including the last mile underserved segments. We already have it. We have UPI, which is growing at a great pace. The next step, I guess, for the UPI is internationalization of UPI, right? We have to cut down on the cost of remittance and create a framework in which people can actually remit money from inside to outside, abroad, and also send money into India, right, in a reasonable cost. And the next big thing is, I think, we haven't spoken about the capital markets and the fintech innovation in the capital markets. The demat account in the last 2 to 3 years, right, it has increased 40%. And then, in fact, in the retail investors, they have jumped, I think, doubled up, right? From 2016 was around 45 crore, and this time 2021 around 90 crore. So there is opportunity all around, and I think, in the words of, and then I guess the last thing which I should not miss on is the investment. So there are 2,100 fintech startups which are there, and out of that, 2,100, I think the startups which are there, 67% I think are in fintechs. And there are 20 unicorns already in fintech, and one out of every 4 unicorns are in fintech. So the supply side is also present there. So it's a very happening and a very engrossing place to be in. So in the words of our Honorable Prime Minister, I will just say that the future of fintech and the industry 4.0 will be emerging from India. Thank you.
Thanks, Sachin. Mukund?
Well, I think, again, I echo the optimism all around. I think there's a great future. I also think that we are heading towards some kind of convergence, really, between banks and fintechs, right? Both bring their own strengths to the table. Banks have, varied set of products, risk management capabilities, legacy systems. Fintechs are all about customer focus, customer journeys, customer delight, and they're both learning from each other, right? So I think at some point you're going to see this collaboration develop into something much larger, and which will create an economic powerhouse. As my colleague said, it'll going into offer financial services to undeserved segments and utilize technology to really reach out to all, whether you have farmers or you have, the marginalized segments of society. So there is this whole convergence, and I think that's going to happen in summary.
Great. Thanks, Mukund.
Mihir, we started with the word collaboration, but I think it's also important to have a little bit of competitive forces in the market, because then what happens is the better and the best prevail and sustain. So it's also important to acknowledge the competitive forces which keeps all of us on the toes. That's one. Though collaboration is important for all of us to succeed. The next, I would say, is that as startup ecosystem, what we have learned is it's important to keep a focus from day one on the bottom line and profitability. If you have to sustain, if you want to scale, you want to build a business which will handle the massive scale of operations that you are operating it. When you're talking of fintech, you are responsible for the FIs in terms of data, security, and the scalability, and the experience that you will give to the end consumers of those FIs. So very important to build a business model which is bottom line focused. You cannot burn investors' money. No model can succeed like that. And the third is we are in the process of digitization. What we have to achieve is digitalization. That means we have just started creating 1 or 2 journeys using digital enablers. The end-to-end experience is yet to be seen, which is true digitalization. I hope in recent times, everybody will come together, collaborate, compete, and bring in the best experience to the end users. That's when the true digitalization will succeed. With that, thank you.
Thanks a lot, Sabya. Thanks, everyone. Maybe we just have 2 more minutes. We can open up the floor to any questions from the audience. Maybe 1 or 2 questions we can take, and you can address it to any of the panelists or keep it open. Can we have the mic around?
blockchain. But do you see the problem in that speed and the transaction? Because the MasterCard or Visa or RuPay, the quantum of transaction they are handling, is it possible that the same smoothness can be there? Is there any probability? Because see, everybody is saying it is fashion, everybody is saying crypto fashion. For what is the main thing? So blockchain, is it genuinely MasterCard के लिए, is it workable? Or any other company it is workable? Because see, even right now if I am buying an NFT, it takes 30 seconds for NFT tokens to generate. 30 seconds में मेरा पेट्रोल भर जाएगा, कार्ड स्वाइप हो जाएगा, UPI हो जाएगा. There are multiple things. So is this practical? Otherwise it is like sheep goat की जैसे सब लोग जा रहे हैं तो सब उसके साथ जा रहे. It is the reality. So you have experience of all 7 continents. So you must be the best person जो clear black and white देख सकता है, and you can say something on this. Okay, yes, blockchain is reliable or not. अभी on the other hand, DLT is being used by Indian government itself. NPCI और उनके जो SMS है, they have taken it. So they are buying that it is going to be useful and it is safe and secure. But practical execution, theory and practical, is card payments, transactions, blockchain penetrate कर सकता है? Is it possible that we can use in blockchain?
You know, I can't say for sure, to be honest, because this is still a very new technology and it needs to be tested, right? But I think we are all testing it. MasterCard has recently invested in a company in the US that is running rewards programs based on blockchain technology, right? So this is the way that we are trying to figure out and see how it works and to what extent it can be used to power some of the networks that we are talking about, right? So can I say for sure, black and white, it will work or it will not work? At this point, very difficult to say, right? Because I think we're still testing. We know that there is potential in this technology. We know that there is certain security that exists with technology. That's why people are talking about it. But where is it exactly going to go? For me, right now, very difficult to predict.
Actually, there are 2 more questions to you only, sir. It is connected to it. First is RBI is getting to serve the unserved who are already not served. They are getting into NPCI, RuPay cards. RuPay is government of India. So do you feel the heat? जब गवर्नमेंट ऐसा, देयर इज अ कहावत, जे देशनो राजा व्यापारी ये देशनी प्रजा भिखारी, मीन्स जिसमें राजा ही बिजनेस करना शुरू कर देगा वो पॉपुलेशन में तकलीफ होता है. तो डू यू फील दैट हिट? रूपे इज देयर वहाँ पे, एंड डू यू फील समथिंग के, और दिस वाज अ बैरियर. पहले आरबीआई वाज हैविंग इट्स लिमिटेशन. भाई आरबीआई विल रेगुलेट बैंक्स, इट विल नॉट गेट इनटू फिनटेक, इट विल नॉट गेट इनटू B2C kind of B2B B2C, मतलब it will be dealing with only banks. Right now they are going into single person. आप जैसे जनधन बताया, it is an achievement, but they are getting into it with RuPay cards. So आपने 20 साल 50 साल 70 साल में जो इकट्ठा किया हो वो 1 साल के अंदर पेंडेट करा. डू यू फील दैट हिट? नंबर 1. एंड नंबर 2 मैं भूल गया सर.
Look, I think first of all, I have to commend the RBI because I think they're a very forward-thinking regulator, right? There are things that they're doing around setting up something like a regulatory sandbox, for example, which is actually helping us test new technologies and new systems, right? So I wouldn't say that the RBI is getting into the business because they are not. They are, I think, looking at things from a regulatory perspective. They're looking at things from a customer perspective. And whatever we have seen of the regulator, they have always looked at it from a very customer-focused perspective, right? So I think first part is that. Second, I think your question on RuPay, I think we welcome RuPay, right? The more there is competition in a market, to my colleague Sabyasachi's point, right? The more there is competition in the market, we will all evolve and we will all do better. So from that perspective, I think we're very happy. We look forward to kind of competing with them in open markets.
Okay, last question, please. Thanks. Okay, last 2 questions.
In fact, Mr. Mukul ji had made a little bit reference about corruption, particularly with reference to public sector bank. Oh, sorry, not you. With reference to public sector bank, how it can be coordinated with fintech, and the problem of that can be minimized. Although there are online platforms for loans, and what coordination can be done for exclusively for MSME segment, which is the core of the Indian economy, keeping in mind the need of the MSME.
I don't think it's, let me try and answer that. I don't think it's very much prevalent as a percentage of the total transactions. The fraud value and volumes as a percentage of overall transactions is not that high in India because of the different security measures that has already been put in place by the regulator, by the operators, be it Visa, NPCI, MasterCard, all of them. So I think globally, if you see, the percentage in India is very, very low for frauds of digital payments. There have been certain additional support that has been provided, like a dedicated ombudsman for payments, which has recently been set up, and earlier it was there for banking. So I think a lot of support is being provided, and RBI and the regulator always says one thing, that first I want to secure the funds of the customer, and then I will allow innovation and other things to happen. So I think that's the broad mindset that we have.
A major population, as was discussed, is a question of financial literacy. So most of them, they need to go to the public sector bank, and having financial illiteracy, that issue of corruption, although many reduced to many extent.
You're
but
right, you're right. That financial awareness has to be provided, and that education is being provided by banks, RBI, regulator, to the customers.
Yeah, and even NPA also, I think, in a better way can be addressed by better coordination and collaboration of the entire ecosystem at the fintech level.
Perfect. Thank you so much. One last question, please. Sorry, we are out of time.
May I? Yeah. Actually, a lot of talk about the ease of process in the back end and in the fintech space. But when we see the processing of advances, especially in the PSU banks, advances means I'm talking about the business loans, say on the ticket size 10 crore and above, or 50 crore and above. A lot of time and lot of inefficient ways of processing documents are still in practice. Average time taken for a, say, 25 crore loan is not less than 3 months, even today. Multiple times, same documents are asked, and means, like in the name of digitalization, some of the PSU banks are asking for the same information in their own format, which are different for different banks. That is only putting extra unnecessary burden on the customers, on the borrowers. So those ease are not happening actually in this whole name of the automation. It is only limited to like consumer loans, home loans, or the vehicle loan. But when we see the whole business space, they are still not getting benefit of this speed or this ease of process. So let us talk about the ease of process also.
I think a very fantastic question. See, we are into an evolving market. Now, if you see you have to make payments, how do you make payment? You go to your net banking, make a NEFT or RTGS.
So my question is about advance.
Yeah, I'm coming on to that particular thing only. I'm just telling you that at one particular time it was so difficult to do the payments. Now you do your UPI and send the payment at this particular moment. See, on loans also, if you see micro loans, micro SME loans and all that, we have 30 minutes loan period also. You apply and you can get them in. Coming on to see, ultimately it is the public money. When the bank is disbursing something, and especially bigger loans, they want to, and I'm sure digitalization is happening there also, but it will still take time. It is at a very nascent phase at this particular moment. Before giving a loan which is a bigger, which is going to affect their balance sheets and all that, That's why they take that time. And I'm sure it is not very far off by the time this also gets digitalized. And I'm sure government is working on these particular things, and I'm sure banks are also working. RBI is working on these particular things. How can we make it faster? But I'm sure it is immediately at this particular moment, it is not there. It is going to happen. That's what I can say from a fintech's point of view.
May I just address Harsha ji? That 59-minute loan, the outcome we get is only a in-principle approval. It is not an approval actually. It is only that you can apply for the loan. The real process starts after that. So all this thing is, optics are good, but the end, the process is still the same which was 10 years ago.
No, so I'll not say it's an optics, right? So there is always a gradual evolution of the systems, right? So I understand the current state. Obviously, as you are pointing out, there are inefficiencies. And I also know what will be the future state in maybe in next 2 to 3 years, right? And I can only speak that is the future state everyone is targeting for. The inefficiencies are there because of the different reasons which we have already spoken about. There is a inefficiency due to financial literacy. So for me and my daughter who is 6 years old, there is already a digital gap in terms of the generation. She speaks in such language which I don't understand at my maturity level also. So you can understand that the staffs, we cannot overhaul the staff, the whole of India or whole of the PSB in one click, right? It cannot be done. So there is a process to it. But in principle, yes, there are some of the things which we are also working on. To give an example, that means like on the KYC front, I am pretty sure everyone will have their views on that. So there is a CKYC platform which has been created, which are getting productionized, right? So it will take time. So in which the pains of KYC will be, that is the intention is to actually address those kind of a pain, right, in the loan processing. So in terms of all those chinks and the chinks in the process of loans, without actually compromising on the security and the financial stability of the financial system in India. So those all things has to be put in place to get that 10-second loan, right, in your bank account. So that is in the process and will happen. And there are different other aspects we can take it up offline in how it is progressing. But those are all in the process.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I'm sorry we are out of time. Thank you so much everyone for your questions, and thank you fellow panelists for a great discussion. I really enjoyed it, and enjoyed the interactions and the perspectives from all of you. It's been a fantastic discussion. Thanks a lot. Thank you everyone.
Thank you so much for being part of this session and such interesting discussion. We thank you, our all panelists and the moderator, for conducting this session. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here with us today. We welcome you all at this soulful evening, Santoor Vadan by Dr. Vipal Kumar Ray, and networking cocktail and dinner hosted by SOCHAM. Moving to Dr. Vipal Kumar's introduction, he is one of the finest Santoor exponent of India. He has done doctorate on Santoor from Delhi University, and he is an assistant professor, vocal music in Bharati College, Delhi University. He has represented India as a cultural ambassador in several countries. We would like to welcome you, Dr. Ray and team. On flute, Mayank Raina, and tabla by Saptak Sharma. I hope you all have wonderful evening ahead. The stage is yours, Dr. Vipal Kumar Ray. Thank you, everyone. Jai Hind.
पियानो मौसीकी में बजाया जाता है और इसको क्लासिकल में जो आर्टिस्ट हैं अभी पंडित शिव कुमार शर्मा और पंडित भयन सोपोरी जी, जो कि हमारे भारत के 2 शीर्ष आर्टिस्ट थे, अभी इसी मंथ में दोनों ही हमारे कंट्री के लेजेंड जो है वो एक्सपायर किए हैं। तो आज का ये कॉन्सर्ट मैं उन दोनों आर्टिस्ट को डेडिकेट करना चाहता हूँ। राग भूपाली पेंटाटोनिक स्केल है और इवनिंग मेलोडी का राग है ये। थोड़ा सा ब्रीफ आलाप जोड़ और फिर एक तो कंपोजिशन पेश करूँगा। लास्ट में एक कश्मीरी सूफियाना धुन भी बजाएंगे आपके लिए। धन्यवाद।
Thank you.